All right, I think Crystal attendees are still on hold. Well, good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, depending on where you are here in the United States. This is Joy Burkhardt. I'm the founder and one of the leaders of the Mom Congress community. Welcome to a series, the second in our series of Mom Congress 2.5 events. As folks remember, we generally meet in May in DC, and instead have converted our online content to an online format. This is the second in our series, and we're so pleased that all of you are with us today. There's about 100 or so of you registered and RSVP'd for today's event, which is a members-only event. Welcome. And there may be a guest or two who are with us today. If you're not yet a member of the Mom Congress community and want to be a part of effectuating change, we believe that the voices of motherhood should be as loud as the voices of the NRA, of the AARP, etc. So join us online. You can learn more at mom-congress.com. So welcome, everyone. We first want to start with a thank you and a welcome to all of our coalition member organizations and partner organizations. You can see all of their logos on the screen right now. And we especially want to thank that first and second line of organizations. Those are the organizations that invest financially to make Mom Congress possible. So thank you to our members and all of our partners up on the screen today. We can't do this without you and really appreciate all that you're investing in us. We also want to thank Superkin, who's with us online today. Welcome to our colleagues at Superkin. Superkin is an online maternity clothing line that offers beautiful, soft, and flattering clothing for every woman throughout their trimesters and beyond. So welcome and thank you so much, Superkin. You can find out more about Superkin and check out their line at superkin.com. We appreciate your financial support today and partnership, lifting up the great platform for change for mothers. We have a superstar lineup today. We're going to start with Dr. Saeeda Peprah. After Dr. Peprah speaks, we'll also have the opportunity to hear from Diana Spalding from Motherly, who's going to share some important survey results. We're one of the first audiences to get to see these results. And then we'll also wrap up today with a keynote address from actress Abigail Hawk. And I am really pleased and honored to get to introduce Dr. Sayida Peppera to kick us off today. I do also want to share with you that you'll have an opportunity to add questions to the GoToWebinar control panel, which is that long rectangular box on the right-hand side of your screen. Usually that's where it shows up. So feel free to add questions, comments, etc. We're going to try to address those real time today, but also address those questions that we don't get to through our new online community, which you'll hear a bit about in just a moment. And without further ado, I think so many of you are here today to hear from Dr. Peprah. I have the pleasure of hearing her speak at a conference not too long ago, and several times actually, and her words still resonated with me as one of the most memorable speaking addresses that I've heard really, I think, in my lifetime. And so I'm so pleased that she's here with us today. Dr. Saeeda Peprah is a birth doula and also holds a doctorate in clinical psychology with a multicultural clinical community emphasis. Her specialties include multicultural psychology, trauma, suicide prevention, and maternal mental health. She is one of the most sought after speakers in the maternal mental health space and maternal health space, and we're honored to have her with us today. And without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Saeeda Peprah.
Thank you so much. I am just opening up my screen. Are you still able to see me?
We sure can. Welcome. You look gorgeous.
Perfect. Thank you. When I was asked to do this this conversation and this talk, I thought, where do we start with the question of and the conversation about Black motherhood in the U.S.? And one of the grounding principles that has really guided me in my personal life and my spiritual life in the work that I do, even with clients as a psychologist, and as a birth doula, working with families trying to achieve the optimal birth experience. History, the background, how we got to where we are in this moment is very important to help understand where we're actually at versus where we might imagine we are, or where we hope we'll be, or where we think we are. And so there's a concept in the West African tradition, the Akan people, called Sankofa. And it means that in order to go forward, to be powerful, to lead, you have to actually look back to the history. And so we're going to do a bit of that to understand. And this is not all of the experience of Black motherhood in the US, but certainly it gives us a context. And I felt like it was very timely at the moment we're in. I wanted to kind of start with, my lived experience in the conversation is definitely related to what I'll talk about and what impacts why this is so important to me. I'm a Black woman. I have two Black daughters. Both of my girls have been affected even before they were born in various ways related to the impact of historical trauma, implicit biases that I would have received in maternal care, and even in their elementary years and in their, obviously in the current time with the news, but they have experienced this discrepancy between who they present as and who the world sees them as. And I think that's very important to consider, that the Black mother's experience also is the experience of Black women in general, and that it really doesn't just happen in motherhood, but it starts as a child as well. My girls are now much bigger, and the other aspect that informs the way that I think about this is that I spend a lot of time teaching courses, both to large audiences like at conferences, but also in small community gatherings in the Black community, in communities of color, and in sort of mixed crowds as well. And when I listen to the stories of Black women, it tells me something very specific and very clear about people's experiences, both positive and also those that are challenging. And so I'll bring some of those into the conversation today as well. So let's go back, sort of like, where did Black motherhood in the US start, right? And so we as a people did not start in America as enslaved people. We started in Africa and had rich cultures and heritage and family systems and lineages. But that was stolen from the community at large, and certainly the experience in particular to mothers, that the community was, person by person, group by group, kidnapped from the continent and brought to the United States and enslaved. And that process in and of itself was quite a trauma. And if you have known anything, watched any movies, seen any the literature and information about the transatlantic slave trade and the process of bringing people to the States and to the Caribbean and to other places in the world, it was a very traumatizing experience. And one of the things that I think about as I think of my ancestors when I was in Ghana at the slave castles, I spent time really, just tuning into the experience of my ancestors and those that have traveled through that passage, the door of no return, and the place where they would remove people from the slave castles, as they call them, into the ships and send them throughout the world, that there were pregnant women in that experience, that there were people, obviously the women, many of them being mothers, that their children were there. Some of them had been taken from their children, and that people were raped even in the process and gave birth to children that came out of that level of violence and brought them into the new world. And so just to be conscious of the fact that even in the initiation of the coming to the United States, there was a really strong attack on the Black mother, because one of the things that happened after the Middle Passage and the time where people were transported throughout the world from Africa is that it was banned eventually. It was seen to be this terrible thing, and so, which it was. And so what America did, very different than other places, is really center the breeding of enslaved people and the reinforcement to maintain the wealth of the nation. And so it shifted from bringing people, which was already horrific, to forcing Black women to give birth to the next generation of enslaved children and adults and people. And again, like really having a context for the attack on the Black mother. Some of the other aspects, obviously, of being enslaved is that it's dehumanizing, it's violent. There were beatings, people were disfigured, individuals were raped. There was this like forced quote unquote mating between other enslaved community members, and also obviously we know historically lots of slave masters were forcing themselves upon those that were under their under captivity, and that was a huge part of the culture of American slavery. Wet nursing actually is something that a lot of people don't realize, that that the Black women, not just those that were enslaved, but even those after, spent many years being wet nurses for white families, obviously in bondage. They were forced to do this. If you have breast milk, as we all know, that means you had a baby. And so where's your baby in the course of you giving milk to these white families? And this was pervasive throughout the lineage of slavery, that Black women were forced to take care of white children. And it actually became one of the viable employments after slavery ended. So maintaining sort of that servitude to other families, but denying your family your maternal experience, your breastfeeding, and having to really survive, juxtapose your family. Obviously, the stealing of children was an active part of slavery. And so one of the experiences for Black motherhood is, a concern around the safety and the autonomy of your children, right? And so being able to know that they're yours, they belong to you, that no one can take them away from you. And this is something that we hear even in focus groups now. Obviously, this is a historical situation, but when we think of child protective services and other and incarceration of young people and young Black and brown children, we definitely see that there's been a pervasive sort of cultural lineage in the Black community around the lack of safety of children, and the concern that the state, the government, the forces that be, the powers that be, have the power to take your children from you. And this is something in the maternal health world that really becomes a problem when we look at the level of trust or lack of trust that communities have, but also the way that we create policies that can inherently disenfranchise Black mothers when we have a system that's biased in this way, where there's a question about the whether or not Black women are positive parents. Now, obviously, it's a general stereotype, and not everybody believes that. But there is in social work, there is in mental health world, there is in the medical field, this idea that the Black mother, in and of herself, because she's Black, not because of racism, not because of the history, is an unfit mother. There's this legacy of these ideas that have been perpetuated, and so we see that Black children, even though they're not the majority of the children in the nation, are the highest number of children that are removed from families' homes. And so lots of these are still sort of like pervasive historical traumas, but really need to be understood in the context of today. I always want to note that we have, our fellow, brothers and sisters that were with us being colonized and going through their own levels of genocide and oppression from the same, oppressive force. Our Indigenous families, my family is of Indigenous heritage as well. And I never forget the mothers of the Indigenous families that also have experienced a similar situation, where we have the forced removal from lands, we have children being taken to boarding houses and boarding schools, forced marriages. A lot of people don't know, if you study the history of sort of the policy in the US around managing the Indigenous people, that there was this idea at a certain time that, well, if we can't sort of force them out of their culture, and boarding schools isn't enough, if we breed it out of them, if we force people to marry into, and particularly Indigenous women, to marry white men, then the children will perpetually be lighter, and that you would breed out the Indian. And this was like the terminology and the way that it was used. And so what I think is significant about that is when we start looking at the impacts of this sort of historical legacy on maternal health, we really see connections, and Indigenous people and African Americans have very similar statistics around maternal health, but we'll get to that. So some of the things that I think are really important for us to remember as well is how harmful and traumatic the medical and official sort of like health services for this country have been against Black people and other people of color. We had experimental gynecological surgeries conducted on enslaved women, where they were purchased for the purpose of conducting surgeries to try to find the cure of fistulas and all kinds of things to understand the female anatomy. And what I think is interesting, and for those of us that know sort of this idea that people now, have perpetuated in the medical world, but also just sort of this idea that it's inaccurate, that Black women don't feel pain in the same way. One of the historical legacies of that is actually this idea that they actually started with these experimental surgeries and trying to examine the women's anatomy with white women. And they were considered to be too frail and too fragile. And they would cry and they would scream and they would, become ill, as of course a person that is being tortured would. And what's interesting about the experience that they had in their minds around Black women is that they were able to take pain differently. And the concept of this as a psychologist is like, it's so problematic, because you'd have to understand that if a person is a human and they have a nervous system, they could feel pain the same. Like, this is a scientific reality that people may have variations of how pain is felt, but there isn't a racial variation in how people feel pain. But there is a psychological one, because if you've experienced high levels of torture, high levels of physical pain, your endurance mentally, what you think you can contain, and also the threat of your life, that if you don't do what you're asked to do, if you don't find a way to make it better for someone that they're torturing you. And I don't know the experiences personally of the women, and, who obviously went through this horrific experience, but having worked with people as a psychologist who've experienced trauma and rape and torture, and listening to their stories and understanding what happens to the individual, it's very sad that the interpretation would be that somehow that it was easier and better and less harmful for it to be done on people who were already experiencing so much trauma and oppression. We also had a third of the population in Puerto Rico that was intentionally sterilized under, government strategy, which a lot of people aren't aware of. Indigenous communities also had lengths of intentional sterilizations to their communities as well. In the Mexican community in particular, in Los Angeles, there have been a lot of opportunity to learn about, well, not a lot, but a significant amount in recent years, some of the intentional sterilizations done in hospitals, and particularly in Los Angeles. No Mas Bebes, I always recommend that people watch that for a couple of reasons. It gives you empathy for anybody who's ever experienced forced sterilization of their community or in individuals and families, the personal experience, because there are personal accounts there as well, but also to just really understand, the layouts, I think politically, structurally, and conceptually, how this could be something that is very real in many people who might be listening to this call in their lifetime. And, and also obviously, one of the concerns I think that continues to be an issue is how hormones are tested, how birth control and different medical interventions are tested, and who they're sort of trialed on. And we have historically had them being tried on poor and Black and brown communities. And that's also problematic, because you then have people who've had bad side effects and problematic reactions that I think it makes it difficult for people to understand why there's so much distrust. And only if you know the history and you know the information, you don't find that to be confusing. These next image, I'm giving a trigger warning, are a bit graphic, but I think important to understand sort of what the lengths of the experience is, especially because in the community, these are images and concepts that we experience. I think now, this is something I've been talking about for years. But now with George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and so many conversations, Ahmaud Arbery, and everyone that has been killed publicly or the information about it has become public, that the impact of that for the individual is really intense. And so the community has experienced this for a long time. So one of the things, obviously, that we have to remember is that we didn't just have enslavement that ended. We also had, systematic, ongoing, institutionalized racism, which we all recognize is still in effect in many ways. We had Jim Crow. We've had police brutality that's had its different ways in the 60s, and we had the KKK, and many of whom were formal enlisted police and sheriffs. And so there is this connection also between the systematic and the individual and the vigilante. We had public hangings of Black women. And we have beatings, not just of men, which we see a lot more, but also of women, and the way that women have been treated in the United States, even now, is abhorrible. And it's something that people don't know a lot about, that it's not just men that were attacked and have been targeted in this way. So a little bit about the historical trauma impacts, in particular on maternal health. And there's lots to get into, and I go into this at length in other topics, but I just want to kind of touch on it briefly. The impact of stress on the body, perpetual stress, is one of the silent killers and dangers of health in general for all people, not just Black people, not just brown people, not just poor people, but for anyone. If you have chronic stress, it is something that if you get an immune disorder, if you have cancer, if you have some kind of situation, one of the first things they'll ask you is, well, what do we do to reduce your stress? Because it has such a high level of impact. It impacts the immune system. It impacts digestive system, the cardiovascular system, your heart, the musculoskeletal system, your ability to, whether or not you have migraines, whether or not you have extreme and constant tension in your neck and in your back, the reproductive system, fibroids, internal reproductive challenges are also linked and connected to chronic stress, and the endocrine system, your skin, rashes, hives. One of the things that, if you look at the disparities in the Black community and other communities of color and other communities that have chronic stress as a part of their life, and I'm saying this to say that racial stress, race-related micro-stressors are aspects of chronic stress, that what we see is that it has the effect somewhat generationally, which is a whole nother topic on epigenetics, but also individually, to lower your ability to reduce your stress, because over time that system sort of gets shot out and you cannot as easily regain composure and calm. And so you see higher blood pressure. Sometimes in studies they've done where they'll compare the resting, sort of like get somebody to rev up their blood pressure, have a team of Black women, and then comparing them with other women, and seeing that in many cases, the Black women's blood pressure doesn't lower at the same rate, and it doesn't go back to arresting in the same pattern. And it's like, well, what is that? Is that biological? Well, no, because we're not, a genetically homogeneous group. But that is a shared experience, potentially, that there is so much chronic stress in the life of Black women that it has this level of impact, and we know that it does. We probably know many of the maternal health disparities, but given that I mentioned those various aspects, I want you to sort of see how they come into play. So we have mortality, and particularly the maternal mortality is related to, now on the physiological side, but also we're going to talk about the racism side as well. Vulnerabilities of strokes, which is something that we also see is higher in Black communities. And so we have this melding of chronic stress and the impact of racism and chronic race-related microstressors, compounding with implicit bias and racism and systems that are not necessarily set up in a way that is supportive and healing and culturally congruent and culturally enforcing and affirming, where people don't necessarily feel welcomed, where doctors and physicians and nurses and maybe doulas and midwives and various people are not able, willing, understanding to be able to listen to and hear the needs, to attend to them, to understand how significant they are, that there is a value system placed on certain communities. I was at one hospital and they had mentioned that they had one wing for Medicaid clients, it wasn't in California, and another one for paid insurance. And I just thought, oh, what a house ready for racism and implicit bias. Because if you know that those people over there, and then you fill in the stereotypes, and then those people over there, I mean, you can imagine the reality of how this country is, how people can treat people differently. And so we have a very strong concern around maternal mortality and the way that this interplays. And all of this really connected to the impacts of racism and oppression. Obviously, C-section rates are high. And, we also have perinatal mood disorders that are also high. Breastfeeding, which we talked about a bit of the history of breastfeeding, and you can imagine for a community that's had such active hostility, active oppression of independent, autonomous motherhood, the opportunity for generations to be able to feed your baby as your baby needs it, to be able to have your children and to nurture them. And then, of course, the poverty aspect and the need to find a way to survive in a world that's hostile toward your community requires you to work, to get education, to do things that take you outside of the home. So the Black mother, unlike some other mothers in America, have had generations where they are a working mother, and they're oftentimes outside of the home, which then also impacts the ability and the rate of the capacity to breastfeed. So then you have generations of community that haven't breastfed or have it spotty here and there, pervasive stereotypes and ideas around it. And then you have sort of this environment where it is that we have the lowest rate of initiation of breastfeeding. But I will say that I really truly believe this, and I will, check back in 10 years, that we will be the fastest growing breastfeeding community in the nation. Because the shift in the consciousness of the Black community and the way that we are on platforms like this, able to sort of explain to the mass world that is actually receiving us and caring for us, is coming to understand some of the things that are really important and significant and why they impact the community, and why there is a level of a need for a high level of cultural congruence and care and humility and the support of the Black community. I want to end talking about resilience. In spite of all of this, we are still alive. We are still here. We still care for our children. We still care for our community. The Black mother, the Black woman is, of course, I'm biased as a Black woman, one of the strongest mothers and communities of women in this nation. And I'll say that because as a shared community, to go through 400 years plus of active, intentional suppression of your beingness, and to still be able to bring powerful images to reinforce things that we know we want to uplift in our community, to have active Black organizations, documentaries, the Black Mamas Matter Alliance, a forming of Black women-led organizations all over the country. It's incredible. If you look at Black Mamas Matter Alliance, the Kindred partners are all over this country. And they didn't just start with Black Mamas Matter Alliance. We existed. Black Women Birth and Justice, all of us have existed. And we have been doing this work in our communities despite all the difficulty. We're like always thinking forward. We're very, we have a level of fortitude that it really takes you to understand our history, to understand how much it is. And so I really wanted people to be sort of thinking about, the power of that. The culture of resilience is pervasive as a key component of Black motherhood. And this is a quote that I love of Harriet Tubman. If you hear the dogs, keep going. If you see the torches in the woods, keep going. If they're shouting after you, keep going. Don't ever stop, keep going. If you want the taste of freedom, keep going. And I think that this really captures the spirit of Black motherhood. The last thing on what you can do, this is for Black mothers and families. There is an excerpt that Black Women Birth and Justice put out, a statement on how we're feeling as Black women. And the one thing that I'll read about this, and you can look on the website, the full document is there, that however we're feeling, whatever we need to do to take care of ourselves right now, all of it's valid. It's okay to be angry. It's okay to grieve. It's okay not to engage with white friends on social media, at your job, or wherever it is, where it's, especially at this time, it's very painful because a lot of people are looking to Black people to do something. And we're like currently experiencing high levels of emotion, and a lot of people are highly triggered and feeling trauma. And that's a lot to ask of individuals, even in positions of leadership, to step up to do something when they are sort of, in this case, the victim of what is happening. That it's okay to be okay with things burning down. It's okay to not go out. It's okay to stay home. It's okay to take care of your family. It's okay to take care of yourself. It's okay to feel, to do whatever you feel you need to do. And for the broader community, to engage actively in dismantling implicit bias for yourself, for your community, and your institutions, studying social justice, human rights, anti-racism, social determinants. Like, this history cannot just be known by the community. It needs to be known by everyone so that we can understand how important it is for us to shift things. Recognizing and acknowledging Black women's contributions and struggles, I think is, when I see a Black woman struggling, as a psychologist, I'm going in and I'm working with someone. Right away, I am reinforcing how strong she is to even be in front of me, and what she might have gone through and what her ancestors might have gone through and how it might have impacted her. And so I'm going to the strength of the suffering and not to the pity of the suffering. And I think it's very important to center the power that is there, even when people are experiencing a struggle. How much it's taken for them to just be there is something that they actually have, and it's a resilience within. And again, to support your local Black women-led organizations. Black Mamas Matter Alliance is just a start for you to see where people are all over the community. And so if you go on the website, you can look and you can find all the organizations that are existing all over the country and support them. If they're in your area, see if they need anything. And obviously financial support and logistic support and supporting policies and agendas and what the community says they need. That's what I recommend that everybody support. Thank you so much.
Dr. Peprah, thank you. Texts are flowing in, questions and comments in the chat that this is so powerful and exactly what the Mom Congress community wants to hear and needs to hear, and you delivered it in such a powerful and graceful way. We are recording today's session and we'll definitely be sharing this with our wider audience. And I just, on behalf of the Mom Congress community, want to acknowledge the incredible trauma. I have goosebumps all over my body. I think probably many of you do too, that the Black community in America has endured, and that the mothers that we're serving have endured and are still enduring. And you said it beautifully, that you're so grateful that communities like this are receiving you and Black mothers and caring for you. And I just want you to know, and all of the Black mamas listening now, this is your home too. We are so happy to co-create content and lift you up, and are grateful for you being a part of the community. We know it's our role to educate ourselves, which we have a lot of making up to do. We have always, I think, considered ourselves allies, but there's still so much more to learn. So thank you, Dr. Peprah, for an incredible overview of history that we all need to know if we're in this community and we all need to care about. With that, and we will be talking a little bit about a toolkit that we want to unveil for action this summer that builds on much of what Dr. Peprah has shared. We'll talk about that in just a moment. But next, we have a speaker, Diana Spalding from Motherly, that will be joining us. Motherly, some of you know, has been one of the Mom Congress media partners, or the Mom Congress media partner, key media partner, since last year, and heard one of their founders speak at Mom Congress. If you joined us in DC last year, really powerful women that care about so much, including lifting up the struggles of motherhood. We'll get to hear Diana share a little bit about their new survey, or ongoing survey, but survey results from 2020. We're again one of the first groups that gets to hear the results presented. She'll also hit on some of the racial disparities that were addressed surrounding COVID in the survey. And with that, I'm pleased to introduce Diana Spalding. She is a certified nurse midwife and also a pediatric nurse. She's a mother of 3. She also serves as the education director at Motherly, and that's mother.ly. If you want to find Motherly online, we encourage you to join their community. She also wrote Motherly's new guide to becoming mama, which I think some of you have seen. It makes a great gift to mothers, and we're just so grateful, Diana, for you and the Motherly team to be joining us today and always along our sides. And with that, Diana, we'll go ahead and turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Joy. I'm so honored to be here speaking with you. And Dr. Peprah, thank you so much for sharing everything that you did. It was an incredibly powerful conversation. Thank you so much for letting us be a part of that. So, like
Diana,
Joy,
I'm
yes.
going to pause for just a minute because for some reason we see a black screen, and let's see if we can't change that instead of your beautiful face, which we saw earlier today. Let's see if we can change that.
It looks like my camera is on, and it's not that beautiful, so you're not missing out on much. So if I need,
well, we'll show your photo later. Okay, great. It looks like some people can see you, so I'm not sure what's happening on my end. I'm so glad everyone else can see you, or at least several of you can. So Diana, I'll turn it back to you, and thanks for bearing with us on that little glitch there.
Oh, please, this is the new reality, right? Figuring out all these tech calls, so it's totally fine. So every year, Motherly does a State of Motherhood survey where we send out a survey to the members of our community, and we work with our distribution partners like Mom Congress to get the survey out to as many mothers as possible so that we can get a sense of what is really going on for mothers in this country. So again, this was our third year. This year, we sent it out via a subscribers list, social media, and partner channels. 3,800 mothers responded. This report focuses on millennial women, of which there are about 3,200 respondents. And we're looking at millennial women being aged 24 to 39. The data that we collected were then weighted to reflect the racial and ethnic composition of the US female millennial cohort based in the US Census data, and Edge Research helped us do this. And then additionally, we finished the survey in March, I believe, and then suddenly we realized that there was this really big thing in the world happening that was probably affecting motherhood pretty significantly. So we sent out the COVID-19 addendum survey, which reached about 3,100 millennial mothers, just to get a real sense of what millennial moms are going through with COVID. So one of the biggest things, and I'm going to highlight sort of some of the most dramatic findings of this study, but it's a really rich study with tons and tons of data. So I would encourage you to dig into it a little bit more if this is of interest. And I'm just going to highlight some of the big things. One of the biggest things that we find year after year is that mothers in the United States do not feel supported, and it's been going up. So this year, 89% of mothers say no when asked if society is sufficiently supporting mothers. Last year it was 85%, the year before it was 74%. Essentially, this means that our society is not showing mothers that they are important. And it's incredibly distressing to experience living in a society that doesn't show you that is important. And ultimately, we need to understand all of the systemic foundational problems that are making mothers feel this way. Systemic racism, of course, heteronormative expectations, misogyny, economic disparities. There's so much foundationally that is causing mothers to feel unsupported. And part of the work at Motherly, and I know at Mom Congress, and many organizations beyond, is to really identify what those issues are and attack those issues. Because when we continue to sort of look at the surface of mom's well-being, that's great, but it's not good enough. Very similar to what Dr. Peprah was saying, living with chronic stress and feeling unsupported has very significant implications. And so we, all of us need to look at what those foundational issues are. When we ask moms what they think they need in order to feel more supported, they comment on stronger government policies around paid family leave, more childcare, and they also talked a lot about their employers, so wanting more understanding employers. This included things like flexible work schedules, paid maternity leave, either childcare on-site or subsidies to help pay for childcare, One of the things that we talk about at Motherly a lot is wondering how COVID-19, certainly it's been tremendous hardship. We also wonder what we can learn from this experience and how maybe we can take a lot of the learnings and apply them to help make things better. The analogy that I keep coming up with, and it's like kind of a gross analogy, so bear with me, but I also feel like we're moms, so we can deal with gross stuff often, right? But if you've ever had like a fish tank and you go to clean out the fish tank and you have to like get the gravel up, and when you clean the gravel, like all the muck from in the gravel comes up and you're like, whoa, the water's really gross. I feel in a way like COVID-19 has done that. It's kind of like all of these issues have been here, right? None of this is new, but it's giving us an opportunity to say like, whoa, there are some really significant issues that we were like kind of ignoring and, stamping down under the gravel. And now the water's really cloudy and we're like, oh, that's a problem, that's a problem, that's a problem. And so in a lot of ways, I think that that COVID, certainly it's not a blessing or anything like that, but things can come from the problems that COVID has helped us to identify. And a lot of that has to do with mothers who are employed. Flexible work schedules, the ability to work from home. I forget who said this quote. The name is escaping me, but the person who said that our society expects us to parent like we don't have children, and parent like we don't have a job and work like we don't have children. And I think that COVID has really shown our country that no, we have both of these things. We are mothers and we are employed. And these things go very much hand in hand. And so we are now trying to work on ways that that we can have both of those existences and not have to hide one from the other. 10% of moms say that better social support would make the most difference. And this is even more important to the non-employed moms than it is to the employed moms. Yeah. So when we look at social support is essentially feeling like you have access to people who will help you, or actually having access to people who will help you. Both of those are important. Now, mothers in our survey told us that 71% of moms are raising their family with members of their own family or their partner's family close by. And almost 60% do have a non-family village. About 50% feel very supported at home. Unfortunately, about 50% say that they are only somewhat supported. So there is a significant amount of sort of quantity of support, with, almost 3/4 of parents living near people that can help them, but they still feel unsupported. So it seems like we need to work on the quality of this support. And again, understanding that a lot of the issues that are affecting mothers right now are sort of foundational issues. And so, yeah, you have someone who can come over and help you, make you dinner that night, or yeah, you have a family member who can watch your kids if you need to go to the dentist emergently or something like that, and that's wonderful. That doesn't discount the fact that there are huge foundational issues in the society that we really need to work on. When we look at where moms feel like they need the most support, over 1/3 said that it's physical and mental health. And of note, less than half felt that they are always listened to by healthcare providers. And Dr. Peprah, I'm so grateful for you sharing the history of Black mothers that you did. And certainly that is, I think, a big component of what we're seeing with these survey results as well. As Dr. Pepper shared, Black women are significantly more at risk of dying and having severe morbidity from pregnancy, birth, and postpartum complications. And one of the biggest issues that we have seen is the lack of providers listening. And researchers are finding, for example, that providers are less likely to respond quickly to reported symptoms when those symptoms are being reported by a Black woman. So a woman says, I have XYZ concerning symptom, and it's dismissed. And so really, as a medical provider, ensuring that I am always listening and also doing the work to advocate for women and supporting and holding our own medical professionals accountable and making sure that we face the reality of this and that we just do a better job of listening, and again holding professionals accountable for listening to women, because women know their bodies and we can trust women to tell us what's going on with their bodies. Women also need more support in the home, and they need more support with their spouses. One note that I think ties into the social support piece a little bit, that I just as a midwife find sad and fascinating, is that 31% of millennial women are having postpartum sex before they feel ready to do so. This was a new aspect of the study that we actually started looking into last year, and I'm really excited to dig into that a little bit more and figure out exactly why this is. Where is this pressure coming from? Is this pressure societal pressure? Is it partner pressure? Is it self-induced pressure, which is probably still societal pressure, really, at its core? And how can we help support mothers? Because certainly there are significant ramifications, both emotionally and physically, for engaging in any type of intimacy before feeling ready to do so. So I want to start talking a little bit on burnout. And just before I dig into what we found, I just want to share a little bit about what burnout means. Burnout is more than a catchphrase. Burnout is actually now recognized by the World Health Organization as an occupational phenomenon. It's defined as feelings of energy depletion or exhaustion, increased mental distance from one's job, or feelings of negativism or cynicism related to one's job, and reduced professional efficacy. Now, the WHO is talking about burnout again as a professional diagnosis when it comes to the workplace, but we can all agree that for mothers, being a parent is a significant or the primary component of their sort of professional life, whether or not they also are employed. So I think it's only fair that the definition apply to them too. And it's something that's really important to consider because it has very real consequences. Burnout leads to significant medical conditions like stress, heart disease, depression, high blood pressure, diabetes, and more. There are incredible economic ramifications, but way more important, it is impacting people's well-being and their lives. Essentially burnout can lead to death. And so it's something that we really need to address. And it's a big problem because 97% of millennial mothers reported feeling burned out by motherhood at least some of the time. So that's pretty much everyone. Factors that contribute to burnout are having more than one child. And interestingly, employed moms are actually less likely to feel parenting burnout than non-employed moms. So when we talk about burnout, often we talk about self-care. Well, but just take care of yourself. Just do a little bit of self-care and your burnout will be fine. And it's interesting because the onus of fixing burnout is therefore often placed on the mothers themselves. I talk a lot about burnout at my work with Motherly, and people will often say, I get sort of two responses, people who are like, yeah, I'm really burnt out, I feel you, and people who say, well, you're just taking on too much. You just need to do less. You just need to take better care of yourself. And I think that all of that is probably true. I could say no to being the mom of the class, class ambassador or whatever my title is there. I could say no to, birthday parties. I could do a better job of saying no. And also, I didn't have a paid maternity leave, not with Motherly. I wasn't with Motherly at the time. Like there are systemic issues at place that are causing our burnout. And it's important to remember that, there's no bubble bath or glass of wine that will undo the stress of systemic shortcomings. And I think we need to take a much broader look at what self-care means. It's become like this catchphrase, right? But self-care is more than that bubble bath and that glass of wine. Self-care is setting, really significant boundaries for yourself. It's making appointments with mental health therapists when you're able to. It's, advocating for mothers. It's doing all of this work. I think we need to look at self-care again at more of like a foundational level. A couple of the aspects that we looked at self-care in our study was sleep, of course. Not surprisingly, only 8% of moms get 8 or more hours of sleep a night. And almost half get less than 6 hours of sleep at night. Certainly, unsurprisingly, sleep is more scarce among moms of multiple young children, and it does tend to get better once they're older. Socialization, again, we talked about the significance of social support. About 50% of moms, and this was the pre-COVID portion, so I'm sure this is much higher now, but 50% of moms report not going out with friends in the past month, and 50% have not gone on a date with their partner in the past month. Almost 70% of moms had less than 1 hour to themselves without work or family obligations in the last day. And again, this was pre-COVID, so it would be interesting to see how the numbers have changed. So when we look at the impact of COVID-19, 74% of mothers reporting that they feel mentally worse since it began. The positive, I guess, is that there's a 12% improvement on the division of household labor for partnered mothers, but still 74% of mothers feel worse since the start of COVID. The most significant cause of stress is childcare. And I think it's important that we really address this. I think COVID is, things are shifting, the country is reopening, but it's still incredibly slowly, and who knows what the future holds. This is a very real threat to our sort of mental health on an ongoing basis. And so now is a time for being both incredibly gentle on ourselves and also being really proactive when it comes to putting up those boundaries and doing that sort of radical self-care, not just getting to bed an hour earlier, but making appointments with therapists when we can, eating really great, awesome foods, and working with politicians and policymakers to make things better for all moms on a foundational level. After COVID is over, employed mothers are hoping to see more flexibility for themselves or their partners, and are hoping to see more family time together. And stay-at-home moms are looking for more family time together, and they're also actually more interested in paying off debts and becoming financially stable. One of the things that we also look at in the State of Motherhood survey is what mothers want to foster in their children. And kindness has won, I believe, every year. But the top 3 are kindness, respect, and resiliency. And when we look at what mothers want to foster in themselves, it's patience. I can definitely relate to that one, especially in the home with my children for 3 months straight now. So patience, understanding, and compassion. The last thing that I'd like to share is just in our COVID-19 addendum study, we looked at how the pandemic has affected mamas of different ethnicities. A higher percentage of Black mothers reported being designated as essential workers, so it was up at about 39%. Perhaps because of this, there has been a slightly lower proportion of layoffs, according to our study, at about 14%. And fewer Black mothers reported feeling mentally worse. They are still feeling mentally worse, but just at a slightly lower rate than white mothers. In the Hispanic community, 39% of mothers are designated as essential workers. 40% have been laid off by COVID, and there was a higher rate of feeling mentally worse during COVID. And for white and Caucasian mothers, 33% were designated as essential workers. 30%, about 32% reported that they or their partners have been laid off, and about 75% are feeling mentally worse. So I think, you know, there's so much more that we could dig into there, but again, recognizing that things were rough and COVID has made them much rougher. And so this is really a time where, you know, we're so grateful to the other speakers who are here today, and to Mom Congress for, again, you know, doing the work of getting to the root of these issues. And Motherly has a website, yearofthemother.org. So if anybody is interested in sort of joining forces and working with us to help to make these foundational issues better, we welcome you. We'd love to have you. And I think that is it from me. I'm honored to take questions afterwards. And thank you so much.
Thanks, Diana. All right, thank you so much, Diana. I know a couple of the things that you said really resonated with me. First, to acknowledge the World Health Organization, acknowledging just last year that burnout is actually clinically significant, and your study shows that mothers are facing incredible levels of burnout. I love the quote that society expects us to parent like we don't have a job and work like we aren't parents. I think that's what you said. That was phenomenal, and exactly what the Mom Congress community, especially the Working Mothers Caucus in our online community, and those who will meet hopefully next year in person in DC, that's what they're trying to lift up and advocate for. Powerful information. Thanks for also addressing disparities for working women, especially essential health workers. I loved your analogy of the muck in the fish tank, and yes, kind of gross, but really important. And also the term we've all heard, silver linings. There do seem to be some silver linings here for so many reasons, including the Black Lives Matter struggles that we've all been experiencing, that now we're really ready to roll up our sleeves and go deep. We really get it now more than ever. So thank you, Diana, for sharing your words of wisdom and the study findings. I also want to share that Diana has an amazing TED Talk that's online. We'll make sure we share it in the online community on the main page later today, along with some of the other resources we're sharing today. So Diana, thank you again for your words of wisdom. I now have the pleasure to introduce Abigail Hawk, who will be joining us. And Abigail, it looks like we're going to be slightly short on time, and our apologies for having to end about 30 minutes into your keynote. I'm going to make this introduction very short because you're amazing and everyone can't wait to hear from you. But just to note that Abigail is an actress. She'll tell you a little bit about the current show that she's on. We'll also put a couple of her other films in the online community. There's one in particular that I want to watch, like sort of Christmas in July kind of thing. I think we all might need a little bit of that next month. So without further ado, Abigail, I'm happy to turn it over to you. And thank you so much from all of us for being a part of this community. We're so grateful for you.
Hi guys, good afternoon. I'm on New York time, so good afternoon on my end, good morning on your end. I'm really thrilled to be here. That was lovely listening to you, Dr. Peprah, and to you, Diana. Very, very informative and thought-provoking and powerful. And I'm going to dive in because I know we're short on time. So yeah, here we go. I don't want America to be great again. I want us to be good to ourselves and to each other. I am not good right now. I am struggling. And how can anything that I say or offer be of any value right now? what message can I possibly deliver to you that is not going to ring hollow? I am desperately trying to find where I fit in all of this current chaos. We all are. But there are two pandemics that are plaguing America. There's the new kid on the block named COVID, and the ancient one called racism. And I want to be on the right side of history here for myself, yes, but also for my children. And so for the last 2 weeks, I have sat in my discomfort. I refuse to be a performative ally. I didn't even know what that meant 2 weeks ago, but I am learning and I am unlearning. I have reached out to my family, to my friends in law enforcement, to those who are protesting, grieving, those who have children, those who feel pulled in multiple directions, who are mired in the intersectionality of it all. And I have realized, in the words of Meghan Markle, that the only wrong thing to say is to say nothing. If struggling through postpartum depression has taught me anything, it's that I need to trust my gut. Our instincts exist for a reason. They are why, as moms, we know our babies better than anyone. We are in tune to our children's every physical, emotional, and mental shift. Our instincts are why my mom woke up with a start and knew the moment that I had been in a car accident. They are why, as moms, when our babies cry, our breasts respond by producing milk. Trust your gut. We need to lean into those beautiful maternal instincts. And right now, my gut is telling me that we need to collectively rediscover and conduct a dedicated exploration of things we may have packed away because they are uncomfortable. For me, as a white person, there are conversations I need to have with my family. Some intentional unlearning, some gentle redirecting of how I am spending my energy, a lot of listening, and knowing that at the end of the day, my mental health is vital, and your mental health is vital. None of us can pour from an empty vessel, so I urge you to put on your own oxygen mask first and rest when you need to. Drink water, eat an orange, call a friend, but keep your foot on the gas. So let's begin our marathon in love. Now, to truly advocate for maternal mental health policy and initiatives, we must talk about race, because for many Black mothers, Indigenous mothers, and mothers of color, their health concerns are discarded, discredited, dismissed. BIPOC mothers' health is disproportionately affected and negatively impacted from the moment they become pregnant. The US is in last place among developed nations in terms of maternal mortality. The death rate in our country is disturbingly high. For every 100,000 live deaths, for every 100,000 live births, we lose 11.8 Hispanic mothers, 13 white mothers, 32.5 Indigenous mothers, and 42.8 African American mothers, which means that on average, Black women are over 3 times more likely to die from complications of pregnancy than white women. I read an enlightening article by A. Rashawn Meadows Fernandez, who strives to amplify Black women's voices. And in her own words, Black Americans are more likely to have high blood pressure, kidney failure, and diabetes than their white peers. These are all conditions that leave us more vulnerable to COVID-19. We are dying of COVID-19 at a rate nearly 3 times higher than white people. I also think about masks. When unmasked, we Black mothers fear our loved ones will suffer from the risks associated with complications from the disease. And when masked, we fear the risks associated with complications of bias and racism. She continues, between COVID-19 and police brutality, the burden of grief is yet another risk to Black mothers' health. And expressing that is one of the few coping tools that Black mothers can call upon to help navigate the stressors of the world. But when we miss out on the opportunity to do so, an understandable decision Considering the constant flow of traumatic stories that we're exposed to, our health suffers. Trina Green Brown of Parenting for Liberation states that Black mothers require healing because of the pre-existing disparities in access to both physical and mental health resources, coupled with the added pressures of round-the-clock caregiving, financial uncertainty, school closures, and social isolation that is uniquely impacting Black mothers. Kelly Glass, who's a mother of 2 Black sons, puts her pandemic experience like this. I almost resented the way that white parents spoke of self-isolation with such grief. It reminded me that as a Black mother, I've always been acutely aware of the dangers in this world that are out there for my children just for existing. Her words really stuck with me because here I am concerned about maintaining my sanity while my sons are home with me, and Kelly is concerned about her son's day-to-day survival. I will never understand, but I stand. George Floyd had a knee to his neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. In his final moments, he cried out for his mama, his source of comfort and strength. All mothers were summoned when he cried out for his mama. This post from Mary Helen Kennerly resonates with me. I'm going to read a little bit of it to you. Mama. He called mama. I feel like I could scream until flames rip out of my throat. He has called up great power. I want all of us to turn, all of us who have heard mama in a store and thought it meant us. We have been summoned. And any of us who have ever cried out, mama, we hear it too, down in our bones. It's a cry that can't go unanswered anymore. We need to gut all the spaces in our lives where systemic racism has quartered. We speak out of the deep mystery from whence all life springs. White mamas, nurture anti-racism in your life like you would a child in your arms, even if you've only just heard it named. Learn what it means and how to foster it. Care about it, give it space in your life, come to understand it, even if it's difficult and challenges everything. Mama is coming. Nothing is stronger than a mother's love, which makes nothing more important than a mother being whole and well. As Kimberly Seals Allers so gorgeously put it, Black mamas are heir to their children, giving them the elements they need to breathe, to survive. Black mamas are meaning makers, weaving words to help us create the tapestry of our lives. Black mamas soothe with hums, hymns, hugs, and hot food. Black mamas protect. Mamas protect. We give our children breath. We are their air. So here we are, moms, together. We have an opportunity in this moment to affect change, to push policy that fosters the mental health of all mothers. I'm going to read you an excerpt of a book I co-authored with other moms that really highlights my journey with postpartum depression as I shift to talk about that. I watched you breathe. Tiny hat and tiny swaddle encompass you snugly, where mere moments ago, that was my job. We were strangers sharing space, strangers spooning you in my womb. And now, here you are, sprawled before me, tiny stranger who I've somehow known my whole life. We've breastfed a couple of times now, your little mouth rooting for my nipple, my jaw gritted with determination, grimacing every time you succeed. It hurts so much. I remember this with your brother. I remember being chapped and raw and bloody and calloused and hard, but my will was harder and I persevered. I silently promise I will with you, too. But my heart burns. It threatens to burst from its ribbed barrier, for I am so in love with you, you see. It is this instantaneous thing. How strange. With your brother, I did not feel this love at first sight, imprinting of souls. My devotion burned steadily. With you, it is hungry, ferocious, and wild, these growing pains and consuming conflagration. I seek to feed it, to sow you to me, but you won't latch. I can't satisfy you. You eat as if it bores you, casually grazing, luxuriating. You mock my battle with insomnia as if you instinctively grasp that sleep is an elusive mate, but 2 a.m. is friendly. I find myself defeated, my heat snuffed out. I recant my silent promise to nurse you, and I pump instead. You are now bottle fed. My companions become a hard kitchen chair and a pink pumping bra and a black granite counter and a crushing sense of guilt. Your father holds you skin to skin, bonding you to him, and I sit with my feet on the cold tile floor. I connect with a machine that evicts my milk and squishes my nipples with a relentless ee. Its reverie only broken by the thrum of the aquarium filter. I am lonely. The cold creeps up like the serpent of Eden, beckoning me to slip under, calling me to darkness. Sometimes I eat his dark fruit. Sometimes I think it would be so easy. Sometimes I lose myself in nausea and cellulite and ovarian torsion and sleepless nights and blood sugar spikes. I overflow with self-loathing. Water pools in my ankles, feeding the root systems of purple trees. My hair is a field of dry wheat. With your brother, it fell out and returned lush and soft, new growth, a new season, but it's brittle now, and it won't fall out. It just hangs there like chaff, like ash spaghetti. The nights of negative spaces hang the moon. But mornings come, and coffee helps. A fresh pot brews, the beans bitter and strong. I pour in some almond milk and I contemplate the fake coral in the aquarium. The tank needs cleaning. The dog needs fed. Your brother's lunch needs packing. Tasks beg my attention. But I pause and I take stock of me taking up space. The landscape of my corporeal form is new. My hips have shifted. There are new dimples, new hills and handles with which I retain water and hold you. New pale stretch marks of broken ground, as if some sharp-nailed witch drew spells down my buttocks with white chalk, tattooing protective lines of maternal instinct into my skin. Gravity has pulled my breasts further down like small mountains after a mudslide. My areolas bend in awkward angles, broken tilt-a-whirls. They still spit milk sometimes, as if they seek your lips. The sky is ablaze with radiant color. A laser beam of sunlight streams through the kitchen window, temporarily blinding me, and it reminds me. The soul that breaks open contains the whole universe. It is there, in the golden ratio swirl of your hair and the logarithmic spiral of your fingerprints. There are Fibonacci sequenced galaxies in your eyes and constellation freckles scattered across your nose, and your fingernails are crescent moons, and your skin is made of star stuff. And I tell myself, I'll soon shave with ease. I'll soon sleep for 5 hours straight. I'll soon see you smile, new teeth breaking forth like crocus shoots in spring. I tell myself it's okay to be sad. Picasso painted miracles during his blue period. And I tell myself it's okay to be tired. Even God rested on the 7th day. I tell myself it's okay. We contain miracles. We are women, and we can do hard things. I am a mother. Being a mother is the hardest role I have ever played. There is a reason that you hear that phrase all the time. It is the truth. I am not sure anything could have prepared me for the emotional onslaught I face on a daily as a mother. The shock and awe tactics, the manipulation, the frustration, the disappointment, the hurt. But I am privileged. I'm privileged because I have a partner who is present. Daddy took his parental leave and was the primary caregiver for my second son while I returned to work. Although I could have taken off as much time as I needed, I would not have been paid. There is no sick time or maternity leave in my line of work. I am privileged because even without paid maternity leave and sick time, I had a job to come back to. A job with people who supported my need to pump every few hours. A job with people who made sure nursing pads were at the ready in case I experienced an unexpected letdown. A job with people who gave me confidence by way of Spanx and kept the donuts coming after I was cleared of gestational diabetes. A job with people who have tissues on hand because I cry a lot now, all the time. I cry at Geico commercials. I'm privileged because my OB actually listened to my concerns when I told her something felt wrong this time around. I am privileged because I have all the support in the world and I still feel like I failed. Here's a prime example. I posted a photo of my son on Facebook of me feeding him with a bottle. I'd been exclusively pumping for about a week, and the icy fingers of my postpartum depression were curling their way around my heart. And I captioned that photo, "When your mom posts so much on Facebook, she drives you to drink." A friend made the unsolicited comment, "I sure hope that's breast milk in there. Hashtag breast is best." It was breast milk in there, but regardless of the bottle's contents, she judged me in a public forum, one where the road to hell is paved with good intentions. I joined Facebook in the first place to streamline my sharing process. I progressed rather quickly from privately posting once a week to my career and my life being dictated by social media. Now, it's obviously the fastest, most convenient way for us to exchange information, not to mention engage in sharing. There is a reason we connect to the internet. As humans, we need connection. Never more true than right now, when so many of us have been sheltering in place and are desperately missing physical contact. Never would I have thought I would be delivering a keynote virtually, but here we are. But there's always a downside to the sharing aspect. Open book means open season. You're damned if you do, and you're damned if you don't. Someone will always question how you mother. There's always a troll or a super brave keyboard warrior just itching to cut down your confidence. But the mom shaming doesn't just happen online. I remember taking my son out for a walk. I was only going out for a little while, just a short walk from one end of the park to the other, and I brought along a 2-ounce bottle of Similac. Unscrew the cap, screw on the rubber nipple, voila, instant gourmet meal. I remember 2 older women coming up to me. "Shame on you." I looked up. Were they speaking to me? Yes, I had their full attention and their faces were contorted with disgust. "You should be breastfeeding. You are a young, capable woman. What you are doing is not good for the baby. It's not natural." I wanted to scream, to cry, to defend myself. I don't want him to eat my sweat. My boobs are bleeding. I needed a break. Instead, I blushed and I said, "I'm sorry. I'm new at this." There was another time I took him out for a jog, but before I began my run, he decided he was hungry. Even the most well-intentioned of babies tend to run on their own schedules. So I sat down, I lifted up my sports tank, started feeding him, and not 2 minutes later, a young woman walked by with a baby. "There are children here. You should cover up or do that at home." This time I took a deep breath and locked eyes with her and I said, "I'm feeding my son. He was hungry. I am doing my best just like you are." She stood there. I sat there. Both of us in this abyss of awkward silence, and then a really quiet, "You're right." We shared a smile. When it comes to mothering, we must go boldly where we've never gone before, but in the meantime, we are still playing catch up with women's equality. Women can do it all, and honestly, we are doing it all, especially right now. We are mothers and teachers and homemakers and sibling peacekeepers, all while trying to juggle working from home, but our ability to multitask comes at a price. We are outpacing our own bodies and we are exhausted. In America, the focus is still largely on the baby, not the health and well-being of the mother. Why do we only have one 6-week postpartum checkup? Without support and constant care, breastfeeding rates plummet. 1 in 5 American women suffer from a maternal mental health disorder, and less than 15% of women with one of those disorders will receive treatment. In Japan, postpartum centers are gaining popularity. New mothers stay overnight and receive care from therapists and midwives with everything from breastfeeding support to mental health counseling to pelvic floor rehabilitation. China has a sitting the month rest period where new moms don't wash their hair or drink anything cold. Mexico has La Cuarentena, the 40-day rest. France provides at least 10 sessions of physical rehabilitation for their pelvic floor. In the Netherlands, moms are given a kraamverzorgster who makes in-home visits for a week and a half after delivery and is trained to provide healthcare to both mom and baby, and also assist with shopping and cooking. These countries acknowledge that the mother's well-being directly affects her child's future health. A depressed mom is less likely to stimulate her child. An exhausted one is less likely to breastfeed. The US must do more. We must go beyond providing physical spaces to express breast milk and granting 6 weeks of maternity leave. Breastfeeding should be discussed at prenatal, postpartum, and pediatric visits so that moms are prepared and know their options when their expectations do not meet reality. Lactation consultants should be covered by insurance, and every mother should get a personalized visit from one during that crucial first week they are adjusting to life with a newborn. Mental health screenings need to go deeper and into more detail. Healthcare providers need to make sure new mothers know that if they cannot or choose not to breastfeed, they are not a failure. Healthcare providers also, particularly in instances concerning mental health disorders, need to follow up. We are making strides. The American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists now recommends that postpartum care should be an ongoing process rather than a single appointment, and that services and support should be tailored to the woman's individual needs. Girl Scouts of Greater Iowa's newly implemented Infants at Work program gives 8 weeks of paid parental leave, and it allows all new moms to bring their infant to work with them every single day up to 6 months. A Long Island community wellness center called Wow Moms merges parents' self-care needs with the care needs of their children, bringing that sense of family community. These are concrete steps to help new moms cope and embrace the connection of motherhood without sacrificing their sense of self. So what more can we do to encourage mothers? How can we more effectively use our platforms? Well, we can start with transparency. Being a mom is hard. It changes you, body and soul. And we are bombarded with these digital projections of parental perfection. We need more body positivity, more inclusion, more diverse voices being heard, more mothers leading. If you have not yet followed #AmplifyMelanated on Instagram, it is pure joy and a hearty helping of perspective. Social media is a visual diary of what matters to us. It can demonstrate our allyship and our activism beautifully if we use it to lift up and love. It's wonderful. Yes, it's empowering, yes. But your social network is all around you. So look up, look out, look up to, look out for. Find that connective tissue. Put your phone down. Social media is not going anywhere, but your mama network is all around you, even if right now it's 6 feet apart. And for those of you who are now empty nesters, remember your hard days. Find that mama who is struggling with a screaming toddler while juggling her newborn and smile at her. Smiling costs you nothing, but it could buy her a spark of hope. What if these little by littles became a force to be reckoned with? For the first time in history, our Congress is actually representative of who we are as a nation. There are more women in office than ever before, and more women means that the issues that matter most to us become the issues that are addressed. So let's boldly build our longer tables. Even if no one joins us to break bread, we will have created space for ourselves. C.S. Lewis once said, you can't go back and change the beginning, but you start where you are and you can change the ending. We can choose to not go gentle into that good night. Poet and activist Sonia Renee Taylor declares, we will not go back to normal. Normal never was. Our pre-corona existence was not normal other than we normalized greed, inequity, exhaustion, depletion, extraction. We should not long to return, my friends. We are being given the opportunity to stitch a new garment, one that fits all of humanity and nature. My postpartum depression and anxiety have clouded my journey as a mother, but I am a survivor, and the evidence of that is right before my eyes. My sons are strong, magnetic souls that I get to steward. My 8-year-old is an inventor, a code maker and breaker, a mad scientist whose ideas flow out of him like lava. My 3-year-old is a wildling who conquers puzzles, devours books, and hates clothes, and is the greatest cuddler on the planet. My volcano and my tornado. They play, and my husband and I pray. In John Steinbeck's classic novel, The Grapes of Wrath, Rose of Sharon, after giving birth to a stillborn baby, recognized the life-saving liquid she possessed, and in the ultimate act of mothering, breastfed a starving man, uttering these 3 simple words: you got to. We got to. We have got to welcome other mothers as they are, because every mother counts, not just the ones who look like you or think like you. No mother is an island. Every mother counts. And in closing, I offer a prayer from 8th century Buddhist monk Shantideva. May I become at all times, both now and forever, a protector of those without protection, a guide for those who have lost their way, a ship for those with oceans to cross, a bridge for those with rivers, a sanctuary for those in danger, a lamp for those without light, a place of refuge for those who lack shelter, and a servant to all in need. In other words, may I become at all times, both now and forever, a mama.
Beautiful. Abigail, you are an incredible ally for the struggles of motherhood, the struggles of Black motherhood, and we're incredibly grateful for you. So many quotes and experiences that you spoke to, including your beautiful poetic words about how postpartum depression ripped you apart. We'll be sharing much of your words and advice and quotes on social media and in the online community later today. We're going to be wrapping up today's town hall with a few closing words about a toolkit that's being unveiled today to the Mom Congress community. It's called the Black Learn, Listen, and Lift Toolkit, and we're challenging our non-Black community to take action this summer to educate yourself and educate your family and start talking about race. We give you the tools and background, much of what was spoken about today in our online toolkit. You can find it on the Mom Congress website under Get Involved, and also we'll be sending it out today with the recording. We also want to give 30 seconds to Kay Matthews. We're going to turn it over to her to share a little bit about an upcoming congressional briefing, and we heard from Abigail all of the opportunities and ways that our community, Mom Congress, is already getting involved. Not only do we have an opportunity to get involved in our 4 caucuses on all of the issues that impact motherhood, and also address the Black Maternal Health Caucus set of bills, 9 bills, but we also have an opportunity to join Kay Matthews live at a briefing that's coming up next month. Kay, we're going to turn it over to you to give us a quick rundown.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Joy, for the opportunity. So, yes, we're hosting a congressional briefing July 14th at 3 p.m. It's Eastern Standard, so be sure to check the time. We would love for you all to join us. Our topic of choice is Bridging the Gaps for Black Mothers in Maternal Mental Health. We'll have some guest speakers, and what I would like to say in joint to what has already been said on this town hall is let's keep moving forward. Now is not the time to stop. Now more than ever, we got to stick together and we got to keep pushing forward to make the type of shift that needs to happen, that should have happened, that must happen. So we hope that you join us on the 14th, again, 3 p.m. Eastern. If you go to our website or you follow us on social media, everything is Shades of Blue Project. We'll continue to put updates of flyers coming next week and so much more. So also in conjunction to that, it is Black Maternal Mental Health Week. So just be on the lookout for a lot of things that are coming together in partnership with this congressional briefing. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Kay. Just in closing, we want to end with one final slide and just thank everyone again. There's a few opportunities coming up. I said one final slide. You can go back, Crystal, to the last one. There's a few opportunities coming up. One is just a workshop in September. You can find information on the website. We know everyone's sort of looking for something light. We think all of us should rest, recoup, support each other, check out the Mom Congress Toolkit online this summer. The candle making workshop is coming up, and then also the Mama's Voices on the last slide, Crystal, workshop or summit is going to be happening online. It says Houston, Texas. Now it's being converted. If you want to go deeper in any of the space and learn more about how to advocate for change outside of the policy arena, which is really our home here at Mom Congress, you can learn more about advocating for change at the Mama's Voices Summit. Thank you all so much. In closing, find us online in the Mom Congress community, and we'll be sending a link to that online community as well as a link to the toolkit and the recording later today. Everyone, be safe, be well, and let's continue to support each other. Use the hashtag #TogetherWeWillRise throughout the summer to talk about all that you're doing to go deep to support motherhood and to support the anti-racist movement. Thanks, everybody. Blowing you all kisses. Thanks, Crystal and team. Thank you, our speakers. Thank you, everyone. Take care, and we'll see you online.